Hi, so I am going to pop on and chat every Tuesday throughout the month because it is Menopause Awareness Month, and really it's Menopause Awareness Day on Wednesday the 18th of October, and I've got quite a few things going on that day, which is great. I'm going to be talking to GP homeopaths about menopause, and hopefully big corporate has asked me to speak. I'm just waiting to definitely get the go ahead on that. And I've got a live coming up with a friend on Instagram. But, you know, other things might fall into place in that week because it tends to get a bit busy. But let's just start with the term awareness, and how aware are you of your process going through menopause, and are you aware it is menopause? You know, certainly for me, the early signs was not conscious at all. That was what was beginning to happen. And I was 42 at the time and walking along the street feeling a bit dizzy and out of sorts and not really conscious of what was going on. Knew something was going on, but wasn't really sure what, and went to my homeopath at the time, and he gave me a homeopathic remedy that set me right for the next 4 years, literally. I took that remedy, things got back on track, and actually what was going on for me was that my blood sugar was imbalanced, and that's why I was feeling slightly dizzy, slightly disconnected, and almost I felt quite drugged. It was a weird sensation. And I now know that one of the key things about perimenopause is your blood sugar going out of balance. So you'll always hear me talking about solutions for that. But maybe you could put down in the comments below, first of all, if you're watching it on what we call replay, put hashtag replay, because that helps to keep this live for other people to interact with and hopefully glean something useful from. And also put in the comments, you know, what first made you aware that you were going through menopause. You know, what was the first sign that something was changing? Because often it's subtle and it starts a long time back. And aside from these talks that I'm doing on actual Menopause Awareness Day, and as I say, we'll see what else sort of drops into space, I'm talking this Friday to a big group of homeopaths about the thyroid. And the thyroid, much like menopause, wasn't taught as a separate subject when I was training as a homeopath back in, I started my training, my very first training was 1996. I did a foundation course, and then I stepped onto the part-time course at College of Practical Homeopathy, and I would have started that course, 1996, and then graduated in 2000. So right back then, we weren't talking about menopause as a separate subject to female hormones. We studied female hormones and we studied pregnancy as a separate subject, but not menopause. And the term perimenopause hadn't even been coined then. You know, we weren't talking about what was needed for the post-menopause period. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is it about the way we live now? What is it about the food that we consume and the environment that we move through, and we have moved through for the last couple of decades as women, that is informing our menopause now? Because the liver is doing a lot of processing. It's clearing toxicity all the time, and it's dealing with breaking down hormones. And so why is this more of a struggle? Has the liver has the liver got weaker, or has its task got greater? And I would say that for everybody its task has got greater, and for many of us the liver has got weaker. Now, we might have weakened it ourselves, probably not intentionally, but through choices that we've made in our life about things that we do, and that often is mainstream medication or recreational medication. So choices that we've made in our lifetime, but also inheritance. Some people will understand that they were born into a family with what we call weak liver pattern. And those signs of having a weak liver pattern can start as babies. And one of the things that I if I've got young mums in my practice with a baby with cradle cap, is I will explain that this shows that the baby's liver is weak. It's that area of the body is like a referral point for the liver. Anyone that studies Chinese medicine will know that the major meridians meet here, right on the top of the head. But that kind of area, if you like, if someone's got an itchy scalp or eruptions under their hair, I might be looking to what's the health of the liver. So yeah, not to get detracted, right back then as a child, we might show that we have a weak liver pattern. So cradle cap, for instance, shows me a weak liver pattern. Little kind of eruptions and spots at the tops of the arms here on the outer edge of the arms, and perhaps on the outer side of your thighs as well, show me that the liver is weak. And you might have a condition which is named or labelled called keratosis Polaris, which is kind of like an extreme of that, and I would relate that to an imbalance of hormones. I would relate that to the liver struggling and the liver being a bit dry, especially if the skin up here is dry as well as eruptive. It can look like little plugs of sort of pussy plugs or little white plugs on the outer arm. Kids can get it, adults can get it, but in a child, it often runs in families actually. In a child, I would be saying this is an indication of weak liver pattern. A woman that struggles, before her period with headaches, breast pain, breast fullness, that sense of I can't wait for my period to get started, that kind of congestion, that feeling is very much to do with the liver, which is carrying a heavy load or is struggling in some way. So as a practitioner, I'm differentiating between is the liver weak or is the liver overloaded, or perhaps both, and in my case at menopause, at times it was both. So I talked there about symptoms that you might experience before your period that indicate the liver is overloaded. So as a health practitioner, I'd be taking your case, listening to your whole hormonal health journey in order to discern the organs that have been speaking, perhaps trying to tell us something for a long period of time. And, coming up to doing this big webinar on Friday about the thyroid, there were signs for me in my periods that the thyroid was not my strongest organ. And interestingly, the thyroid's process in terms of production of hormones relates to the liver as well. So there were signs for me before my periods that my thyroid was not as strong as perhaps it could be. But it wasn't until I was 46 and well into things beginning to change that I really had very clear signs that my thyroid needed some support and attention. So before my periods, for a very, very long time, I'd been feeling chilly, I'd been feeling tired, I might feel a bit depressed, my bowel might go slow, so I might be a bit more constipated than normal. And all those are signs of the thyroid trying to tell me that it needed some attention all those years leading up to menopause. Once I got to 46, the thyroid really showed me what was going on, and it showed me quite graphically because I started to shed hair in cycles. So I didn't just lose a bit of hair every day on the hairbrush or in the shower. I sort of noticeably experienced periods where I was like, oh my goodness, I am losing a lot of hair. And I literally brushed my hair and I didn't know what to do with the hair that came off my brush. It was like I wasn't aware that was menopause. So what is menopause awareness? I literally stuffed it into a Ziploc bag. I was like, what is going on? This is too much. Who do I need to tell? Who can I seek help from? And later, much later, I learned that this was to do with the thyroid having been weakened or further weakened, if you like. So it was showing me for a long time it was low, and then it showed me quite graphically, and that was coming through a period of stress. And I mention this because that stress was to do with my kids going through GCSEs, my partner being away, and me having a lot of work on, and me not concentrating on the food that I was putting into my body. And when you again look to the Chinese medicine conversation about the thyroid, generally we know in all areas of medicine, we should know that the thyroid is responsible for protein metabolism. So it can start with not chewing your food well, not eating too fast. So I was eating in a hurry, I wasn't eating well enough, I wasn't combining protein well enough. And so my thyroid was then struggling to metabolize. And when I looked up in the Chinese medicine books about the thyroid, it said, and metabolizing protein. So that's right, I did a little test with a friend who has a bioresonance program. It's a different one to the one I use. I use two actually. I use the core, previously called the core energetics. It's now called the CIEM bioresonance program, and it's amazing. I've used it for about 18 years this year. I use it every day in practice, but I've also more recently got the Healy, which is a small quantum medicine similar to bioresonance device. But I went to a friend at that point in time, aged 46, with this, signs that my thyroid was low. And lo and behold, what came up on her bioresonance was that I wasn't metabolizing protein, and I wasn't able to create or synthesize methionine. So I anchored into that very particularly. And the other week I did a post about, if you want to scroll back through the post, it's a picture of my hand holding some broccoli, talking about estrogen and talking about the fact that my body doesn't metabolize or process estrogen particularly well. Again, probably goes back to weak liver pattern, to be honest. And that I should probably eat cabbage or broccoli every day to help my body metabolize protein more efficiently. And I found that out finally, more specifically than the bioresonance program, by doing a DNA test. And the DNA test showed, sure enough, I don't synthesize methionine well. So how might I do something about that? I could address it with diet. I could take a related homeopathic remedy. I could certainly think about the quality of the food that I eat, so when I say addressing diet as well, I don't just mean eating certain things, it might be how we eat. So spending time to chew is really important, so we produce the digestive enzymes that preempt us absorbing nutrients and then synthesizing or creating what we need further down the line. So that kind of whole slow food eating movement has a lot of validity, because especially as we get older, if our teeth aren't as strong as they used to be, or not as good as they used to be for some reason, we need to chew efficiently in order to produce the digestive enzymes to process the food that we are eating. So in a roundabout way, what I learned through all of that was my body doesn't metabolize protein particularly well, and the thyroid needs support, and it needed support for a long time. And I although thyroid issues aren't listed as one of our 34 menopause symptoms, I see it all the time in practice. And if it's showing up on your bloods, as it was in mine, aged 46, you've got to a pretty drastic point where you really do need to be doing something about it. If the thyroid thyroid hormones are not showing imbalance on your bloods, but you still got all those signs and symptoms, you still really need to get on that process of supporting your thyroid. And I know I'm focusing a bit on this today, it's partly because I'm writing this webinar, but for Friday for the Southwest Homeopathic Group. That webinar, by the way, is just for homeopaths and members of that particular organisation. There are non-members tickets, but it is for homeopaths. And then out of that, I'll repurpose the content for my own version of that for health professionals next spring. And then because we have different audiences, but I'll also do these minis for menopause, and they are, so far I've done one for perimenopause, one for what I call true menopause, when you're in the eye of the storm, you know things are really changing. And I've done one for post-menopause, and they are all just over 45 minutes long. They only cost £15. They're yours to watch for as long as you want, and you get a load of handouts with them. So if you are listening and you're enjoying this and thinking, I want to know more, check in with which stage of menopause you're at and get one of those workshops, because, you know, they're just chock full of great information for where you're at. And what I started out, you know, by saying around awareness was that, you know, for me, I had symptoms. I was not aware they were the early stages of menopause, and nor was I aware that at that point in time, because I wasn't taught it, and I've learnt it through clinical experience, that each stage of menopause, if you like, might need the same solution, but it's for slightly different reasons. So, you know, when I talk about the need for magnesium in our lives, in perimenopause, that's really about blood sugar balance. In true menopause, it's much more to support the liver in its function of detoxification, to support the heart in its function, because the heart symptoms can come up in menopause for some women. And then post-menopause, you still want that magnesium, because it's going to keep your bones strong and healthy. So magnesium is great for us, preferably dermally via the skin, although there are a couple of much better absorbed oral supplements than they used to be, but I still prefer dermal personally. You need it, but you need it for different reasons. And to some extent, it's the same with the other elements that I talk about. So I'm just going to make these Tuesday chats at 12. I'm just going to make them 15 minutes. So I am going to shuffle. So Julie, I know you've just hopped on, but do watch the rest of it when it goes up. And if you're watching on replay, just write #replay to keep the conversation available for others. And I am going to pull a card. I've got this fantastic new set. I think you can see that. It's the Herbal Astrology, and it's by Adriana Ayales. I'll put a link maybe to these down below, and I'll put a link to my mini menopause workshops as well. But I just thought I'd try and remember to pull a card for each of these sessions as well. So let's see what we have today. We have Mugwort. This is the witch's herb, known as the witch's herb. It is out at the moment, and you can see the white owl and the grey-green of her cloak. Well, if you don't know Mugwort, and next time you go out and you see it and you find some mugwort, you'll know that the underside of the leaves is silvery like the owl, and the upper part of the leaves is that wonderful grey-green colour. And mugwort is found in slightly damp places as a herb, and it's what we would call, I make a balm out of it, and I call it scrying balm, because you can put that on your body, spend time in meditation, and start to look into what you want for the future. That's how I would use scrying. So you want to make a plan about where you're going in the future. Mugwort would be a fantastic woman's wisdom herb, and it's listed underneath as psychic healing. What I might do is take a little photograph of the information from the book, but it has that two-tone aspect of light and dark. So it's also going to reveal to you your dark side, your shadow self, and perhaps allow you to work with that. So yeah, beautiful herb. I'm really glad to have picked that up. And she's got, it's either a dream weaver or a drum in the top right hand corner. So she could be doing a bit of shamanic wisdom there with her mugwort, or perhaps drumming into existence, vibrating in something new and fresh. So I'm going to finish there. As I say, I'll keep these to 15 minutes, and yeah, comments below please. And as I said before doing this, if there's stuff you want me to talk about, just say. So enjoy the rest of your day and see you here